she admitted before leaving me. I'm too embarrassed to introduce you to my family. I didn't argue. I just started fresh in a new city. Years later, she's divorced and begging for another chance. But the man she once hid away has become someone she'll never get back. Monica and I met through mutual friends at a Phoenix house party 4 years ago, and for the first year, everything felt perfect. I was working as a bank supervisor, nothing glamorous, but steady income and genuine growth potential, while she was pursuing her master's degree in psychology at ASU. We'd spend weekends hiking Camelback Mountain, trying new restaurants in Old Town Scottsdale, and talking about building something real together. I thought we wanted the same things, a solid relationship based on trust, shared values, and genuine partnership. What I didn't realize was that Monica came from a completely different world, one where your worth was measured by your last name, your college pedigree, and whether you knew the difference between a sommelier and a regular wine waiter. Her family lived in Boston's Back Bay, the kind of neighborhood where parking spots cost more than most people's rent. Her father was a federal judge, her mother sat on 3 different charity boards, and her siblings were all following the family tradition of prestigious careers. Her older brother David was a surgeon at Mass General, and her sister Catherine was a corporate attorney at some white shoe firm. They operated in social circles where everyone had summer houses, winter houses, and opinions about which country clubs had gone downhill since accepting new money members. The first red flag should have been how she talked about introducing me to her family. My parents can be pretty difficult, she'd say whenever the subject came up. They have strong opinions about everything. Maybe we should wait until things are more serious. For years in, we were living together, but somehow we were never serious enough for me to meet her parents. Meanwhile, I'd introduced her to my family after 6 months, and she'd charmed everyone at Sunday dinners and barbecues, though I noticed she never talked about those visits when her college friends called. The criticism started slowly, almost like gentle suggestions. Maybe you could try shopping somewhere other than Target, she said one day, eyeing my polo shirt. There's nothing wrong with Target, I replied. I know, but image matters sometimes, especially in professional settings. Professional settings where I was already earning promotions and respect from colleagues who cared more about work ethic than designer labels. But I started shopping at slightly more expensive stores anyway, thinking she was trying to help me advance my career. Then came the car comments. Have you thought about upgrading your Honda? She asked while we were driving to dinner. It runs fine and it's paid off. I know, but people notice what you drive. It says something about your priorities. My priorities were financial stability and practical decisions, but apparently those weren't the right priorities for someone dating into Boston aristocracy. The grammar corrections were the worst part. She'd interrupt conversations to gently correct my pronunciation or suggest alternative words that sounded more educated. Actually, it's regardless, not irregardless, she'd say in front of her friends, smiling like she was being helpful instead of humiliating. Her college friend Veronica was the worst influence. Rich girl from Connecticut who'd never worked a day in her life, but had strong opinions about everyone else's choices. During video calls, I'd hear Veronica making comments in the background. Girl, you're still with the bank guy? I thought that was just a phase. Monica would laugh and change the subject, but I noticed she never defended me or corrected Veronica's dismissive tone. The family gatherings started happening without me. Birthday dinners, holiday celebrations, even casual barbecues that she'd mention casually after the fact. Oh, we had dinner at my parents' last night. She'd say like it was no big deal. How come I wasn't invited? It was just family stuff. Super boring political talk. You would have hated it. But her Instagram stories told a different version, showing elaborate family dinners with extended relatives, family friends, and people who looked exactly like what central casting would order for wealthy Boston socialites. Everyone laughing, toasting, looking like they belonged in a Ralph Lauren advertisement while I was home watching Netflix, thinking my girlfriend was studying for exams. The worst part was watching her personality change around her family and college friends. On the phone with them, she'd use this different voice, dropping references to art galleries, wine regions, and cultural events we'd never discussed. She'd mention restaurants we'd never been to and activities we'd never done, creating this alternate version of her life where I apparently didn't exist. Who was that? I'd ask after particularly long conversations with her sister. Just catching up on family drama. Catherine's dating some hedge fund guy now. Her family loves him. Always someone else's family loving someone else. Never her family having any interest in meeting me. The breaking point came when I discovered Monica had attended her cousin's engagement party without even mentioning it was happening. I found out through Instagram, scrolling through her stories and seeing photos of this elaborate garden party at some country club with her entire extended family. Monica was there in a dress I'd never seen, laughing with relatives I'd never met, holding champagne flutes and posing for group photos like she was living her best life. Not a single mention of it to me, not even a casual, "my cousin got engaged," conversation after the fact. When I confronted her that evening, she initially tried to play it off as no big deal. "It was just a family thing, Ryan. Really boring stuff. You wouldn't have enjoyed it." But I pressed harder this time. And that's when everything came pouring out like a dam finally bursting. The tears started first, then the confessions that she'd been holding back for months, maybe years. "I'm embarrassed, okay?" she sobbed, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "I'm embarrassed to bring you around my family because you don't fit in with them. They ask questions about your education, your family background, your career prospects, and I don't know what to tell them." The honesty was brutal, but at least it was finally honest. "So you've been lying to them about me?" "Not lying exactly, just avoiding details that would make them judge you unfairly. Judging me unfairly for having parents who worked regular jobs and a degree from a state school instead of Harvard." "What have you told them exactly?" She wiped her eyes, looking anywhere but at me. "They know you work at a bank. They just don't know what level, and when they ask about your family, I kind of changed the subject. Monica, we've been together 4 years. What did you think would happen eventually? I kept hoping things would change, that maybe you'd get promoted to something that sounded more impressive, or that my parents would just accept you for who you are. More impressive than supervising lending operations at the third largest bank in Arizona, apparently." "And Blake?" I asked because I'd noticed the name appearing more frequently in her conversations lately. Her face went white. "How do you know about Blake? You've mentioned him 3 times this week." "Blake said this. Blake thinks that. Blake's opinion on wine regents." "So who is Blake, and why should I care what he thinks?" The silence stretched between us before she finally spoke. "Blake is someone I met at Catherine's birthday dinner last month. He's a third-year law student at Harvard. His family knows my family." Of course he was. Harvard law student from the right family with the right connections and probably the right trust fund. And, and nothing. We just talked. He understands the world I come from, the conversations my family has, the expectations they have. The world she came from, but apparently I never could. "What expectations exactly?" "Ryan, my grandmother specifically asked me not to bring you to the family reunion next month. She said it would be uncomfortable for everyone involved." The words hit like a physical blow. Her grandmother, whom I'd never met, had made a specific request to keep me away from family events. Uncomfortable how? Because you wouldn't understand the conversations, the references, the way we interact with each other. Blake gets it. When my father talks about federal court cases, Blake can actually contribute something meaningful. When my mother mentions the charity board politics, Blake understands the social dynamics. When my uncle discusses investment strategies, Blake can hold his own. Every word felt like another knife. I wasn't just being excluded, I was being systematically replaced by someone who could play their social games better. So this is about Blake now? This is about me finally being honest about what I need in a partner. Someone who can elevate me instead of holding me back. Someone my family respects instead of tolerates. Holding her back. For years of supporting her through graduate school, listening to her stress about thesis deadlines, helping her practice presentations, and I was holding her back. "Ryan, I love you, but love isn't enough anymore. I need someone who fits into my world, who makes me proud when I introduce him, who my family actually wants to spend time with." She was crying harder now, but pushing through it like she'd rehearsed this speech. "Blake makes me feel sophisticated. When we talk, I feel like the educated, cultured woman my family raised me to be. With you, I feel like I'm pretending to be someone simpler than I actually am." The cruelest part was how she made it sound like she was doing me a favor by being honest. Like breaking my heart was some kind of gift I should appreciate. "I can't keep being ashamed of my relationship, Ryan. It's not fair to either of us. So what happens now?" "I think we both know what happens now. You deserve someone who isn't embarrassed by you, and I deserve someone who makes me feel proud instead of apologetic." The clinical way she delivered that final blow showed me exactly who I'd been dating for 4 years. Not someone who loved me despite our differences, but someone who'd been tolerating me while waiting for something better to come along. I didn't beg, didn't argue. Didn't try to convince her that 4 years should count for something. Instead, I walked to our shared closet and started packing my clothes methodically, the same way I'd organize loan applications at work. "What are you doing?" Monica asked, panic creeping into her voice as she watched me fold shirts into boxes. "I'm giving you what you want," I said calmly. "If you're embarrassed by me, then you should find someone who makes you proud instead of apologetic." She followed me around the apartment as I gathered my belongings, suddenly switching tactics. "Ryan, we don't have to break up. Maybe we could just take some time to figure things out." "Time to figure out what?" "You've already figured out that I'm not good enough for your family, that I don't fit into your world. That Blake is everything I'm not." I loaded my car with 3 years of shared memories reduced to cardboard boxes and drove straight to my sister Jenny's house in Tucson. She took one look at my face and made up the guest bedroom without asking questions. 2 days later, while Monica was probably explaining to her family why the embarrassing boyfriend was finally gone, I was on the phone with my bank's HR department. "Ryan, we've actually been hoping you'd consider a transfer," my regional manager said. "We've got a branch manager position opening in Sacramento. Significant salary bump, full management responsibilities. Interested?" Within 2 weeks, I was living in California with a $20,000 raise and my own team to supervise. Turned out, removing the constant stress of feeling inadequate was exactly what my career needed. I threw myself into the work with energy I'd forgotten I had, implementing new customer service protocols that increased client satisfaction by 30% in my first quarter. My regional director started calling me his problem solver, and suddenly I was being invited to strategy meetings where my opinions actually mattered, leading to my promotion to regional supervisor within 18 months. Sacramento felt like breathing after years of holding my breath. I enrolled in evening business classes at UC Davis, started rock climbing at a local gym, and joined a hiking group that actually appreciated my knowledge of Arizona trails. For the first time since college, I felt like I was becoming the person I was supposed to be instead of shrinking myself to fit someone else's comfort zone. That's where I met Nina. She was belaying for a friend at the climbing gym when I noticed her giving perfect technical advice to a struggling beginner. Turns out she was a veterinarian, had just moved to Sacramento for a job at the region's largest animal hospital. Smart, funny, confident without being pretentious, and when I mentioned I was from Arizona, she got excited about comparing desert hiking stories instead of asking what my parents did for a living. "Most people think the desert's boring," she said over coffee after our first climb together. "They don't understand how much life exists in places that look empty." She was talking about landscapes, but it felt like she was describing me too. Meanwhile, social media kept me updated on Monica's fairy tale ending whether I wanted to see it or not. The engagement announcement came 8 months after I left. Professional photos at some vineyard with Blake in a perfectly tailored suit and Monica beaming like she'd won the lottery. The wedding was everything she dreamed of, elaborate Boston ceremony that made the society pages, complete with horse-drawn carriages, a string quartet, and probably more money spent on flowers than I made in 6 months. Blake Wellington Adams and Monica Elizabeth Hartwell united in matrimony at the historic Fairmont Copley Plaza. Read the newspaper announcement that my mom unfortunately decided to send me. Monica had finally gotten her proper Boston wedding with someone who met all her family's requirements. 2 years later, everything fell apart in the most spectacular way possible. I was reading financial news over breakfast when I saw a headline that made me choke on my coffee. Harvard Law graduate charged with client trust fund theft flees country before arrest. Blake Wellington Adams had been running an elaborate scheme, stealing from elderly clients' trust funds to finance his own lifestyle and his law practice that existed mostly on paper. The FBI estimated he'd embezzled over $2 million before disappearing, probably to some non-extradition country with accounts full of stolen money. The scandal was massive, front-page news in Boston with details about how Blake had used his family connections and Harvard credentials to gain clients' trust before systematically robbing them blind. Monica's name appeared in every article as his wife, the woman who'd benefited from the stolen funds without apparently knowing their source. Her perfect marriage to her sophisticated, cultured, family-approved husband had turned into a public humiliation that destroyed everything she'd spent years trying to build. The family that had embraced Blake as their ideal son-in-law suddenly found themselves associated with federal crimes and elderly abuse. And from what I heard through mutual friends, they distanced themselves from Monica faster than stock prices falling during a market crash. Monica's perfect life collapsed completely. She lost her graduate school funding when the university discovered she'd been living off stolen money. Her degree program terminated, and her social circle evaporated overnight. The Boston elite who'd welcomed her as Blake's wife suddenly treated her like radioactive waste, and she moved back to Phoenix alone, taking a retail job at Nordstrom to pay the legal bills Blake had left behind. Meanwhile, I was presenting at a regional banking conference in Las Vegas, discussing growth strategies that had made my branch the most profitable in Northern California. Nina was there supporting me, proud to watch me speak to an audience of industry professionals who respected my insights about market expansion and customer retention. We were celebrating with my colleagues afterward when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Ryan? Ryan, is that really you? I turned around to find Monica standing there looking like a completely different person. Gone was the confident woman who'd been embarrassed by my background. This version looked hollow, desperate, wearing a dress that hung loose like she'd lost significant weight from stress. Monica, what are you doing here? I've been trying to find you for months. Your sister wouldn't give me your number. Your old workplace said you transferred, and your parents. She trailed off, probably remembering how she treated my family. I even went to their house, but your dad told me you'd moved on, and I should do the same. Good for my dad. How did you find me here? I saw the conference posting online about your presentation. Regional Supervisor Ryan Matthews discussing innovative banking strategies. I couldn't believe it was you. She was staring at me like I was some exotic species she'd never seen before. Professional success apparently looked good on me. Ryan, I need to talk to you privately. It's really important. Nina appeared beside me then, sliding her arm through mine naturally. Hey, how'd the networking go? She asked, then noticed Monica's desperate expression. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Nina, this is Monica, someone from my past, I said, watching Monica's face process that introduction. Someone from my past, not my ex-girlfriend, not someone who'd mattered, just a former acquaintance. Monica, this is Nina, my girlfriend. Monica's composure cracked visibly. Your girlfriend? How long have you been together? About a year and a half, Nina answered warmly, completely unaware of the historical tension. Ryan's told me so much about Phoenix. We're actually planning to visit his family next month. The contrast wasn't lost on any of us. Nina was excited to meet my family, while Monica had spent 4 years avoiding the same introduction. Could we please talk privately? Monica pressed, her voice getting higher and more desperate. Just for 5 minutes. There are things you don't understand about what happened with Blake, about why I made the choices I made. I understand perfectly, I said calmly. You chose someone who impressed your family over someone who loved you genuinely. How did that work out? Her face crumpled. It was a disaster, Ryan. Blake wasn't who any of us thought he was. He fooled everyone, including me. My family realizes now that they were completely wrong about you, about what really matters in a person. Too little, too late, but she kept going. My father said something last week that broke my heart. He said you probably had more character in your little finger than Blake had in his entire body. He said they should have given you a real chance instead of judging you based on superficial things. That's nice of him to say. Ryan, please. I know I destroyed everything good between us, but I've learned what real stability and character actually mean. You were everything I needed, and I was too stupid and shallow to see it. The desperation in her voice was obvious to everyone within earshot. My colleagues were starting to notice the scene she was creating. I can't stop thinking about the life we could have built together. You're successful now, more successful than Blake ever really was, and I threw it all away for lies and fake prestige. She was crying openly now, not caring who saw. Monica, I said as gently as I could manage, the person you were embarrassed by doesn't exist anymore. I'm not the same guy who begged for scraps of respect from your family. I'm not someone who accepts being treated like a backup plan. I know you've changed. I can see it. You're confident now, successful, everything I always knew you could become. We could start over. I could show you how much I've learned, how much I appreciate what we had. Nina squeezed my arm supportively, somehow knowing exactly what I needed without me saying a word. The man standing here now wouldn't date someone who spent 4 years being ashamed of him. I continued. I've learned what I'm worth, and it's not someone's consolation prize after their first choice turned out to be a criminal. Monica looked at Nina with pure desperation. You don't understand our history. What we built together. I understand that history is exactly where it belongs, Nina replied calmly, in the past. As we walked away, Monica called after us one last time. Ryan, you were right about everything. About love, about loyalty, about what really matters. I see that now. I turned back once to look at her standing alone in that hotel lobby, surrounded by successful professionals who were living the life she'd always claimed to want but had never been willing to work for. I hope you find whatever you're actually looking for, Monica. But it's not me. 3 years later, Nina and I bought a house together in Sacramento. Nice neighborhood, nothing flashy, but it's ours. We're planning our wedding for next spring, and both our families are genuinely excited to celebrate with us. Nina's parents love that I treat their daughter like she's precious, and my parents adore Nina's intelligence and kindness. No one's embarrassed by anyone. No one's compromising their values, and no one's settling for someone they have to apologize for. Sometimes I wonder if Monica ever figured out the difference between status and substance, but honestly, I don't think about her much anymore. When you're with someone who makes you feel proud instead of inadequate, the past stops mattering. And when someone shows you who they really are through their actions instead of their words, the smartest thing you can do is believe them the first time and build your life accordingly.